In the midst of domestic turmoil, President Trump left town, landing early this morning in Saudi Arabia, his first of 5 stops on a grueling international tour into high-profile hotspots, including Jerusalem, Vatican City, Brussels for the NATO summit, and Sicily for the G7. So what preparations should President Trump have made for his journey, and what could possibly go off script? Joining me now, someone with impeccable credentials to speak to this. Josh King was director of production for presidential events in Bill Clinton's White House. He traveled to 40 countries, including the countries where President Trump is going. He's the author of the book Off Script, an advanced man's guide to White House stagecraft, campaign spectacle, and political suicide. Josh, stuff happens. It's the 50th anniversary of Normandy, June of 1994. You tell Bill Clinton, you see that pile of rocks that I put on the beach? The Secret Service doesn't want you walking past that spot. What did he do, and what was the ramification?
Yeah, Michael. So what happened was we had gone to Normandy 2 times before President Clinton and his entourage showed up on June 6, 1994. Mapped out every step of the way, thought we would do something that Ronald Reagan hadn't done in 1984, which is actually to walk down to Omaha Beach, surrounded by 3 veterans of D-Day, including Walt Ehlers, who was a Medal of Honor recipient. Had it all choreographed perfectly, just the 4 of them and a Navy and an Army chaplain. And then I got a call from the Secret Service agent who I was working with, and he said, you know, our counter snipers can't cover the president's safety if he goes too far close to the water. So can you put a marker or a flag or something there to make sure and tell him not to go beyond that? And where on Omaha Beach do you get a flag or some marker? Didn't plan on that. So there was a mound of rocks that demarked from the seagrass over to the beach. And I said, what if I create a little pile and I'll just whisper to Bill Clinton, don't go beyond that. Service doesn't want you going any closer to the water. And I did, and he acknowledged that. And then he went out to that spot, and we did the prayer for those who had fallen on D-Day. And then there was going to be a photo shoot with Eddie Adams, the Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer who shot that picture in Vietnam. But there was a few minutes of delay between Adams getting set up and the last thing that we did. So Clinton, who had been on this long journey, just like President Trump is now, decided, well, you know, I've been seeing these thousands of crosses in Nettuno in Italy, in Cambridge in England, and finally in Normandy in France, and I'm just making my own expression. He knelt down to that mound of stones that I put there and formed them into the shape of a cross, and then sort of sat back for a moment and looked at it, and then Rush Limbaugh and Maureen Dowd and those who wrote about that moment filed a Poole report. And Rush, for the next week, was talking about how phony President Clinton was. But I was an eyewitness to it. I was standing right where that picture was taken, probably about 20 feet away.
The point is,
completely legitimate.
The point is, there's only so much you can control. Now, the president has landed in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
There are all sort of pitfalls. Let me put on the screen from 2015 a tweet from candidate Donald Trump where he was critical of Michelle Obama for not wearing a headscarf at the time. Do we have that? We now know that, there it is. He said that, you know, Obama refused to wear a scarf. The Saudis were insulted. Well, Melania didn't wear a scarf. Neither did Ivanka. Nor, I took note, Josh, did the President Trump, hold hands with King Salman today. Saudi Arabia has its own unique set of circumstances.
Yeah. Well, there was all sorts of good reasons for the White House to pick Saudi Arabia for this first stop on a foreign trip. One of them was that horse-escorted motorcade that he had from King Khalid International Airport to the site of the coffee ceremony. Saudi Arabia was going to play it up big. There was also, as you may recall, this PowerPoint presentation that the Saudis made, almost asking for the first visit by a U.S. president, talking about the $100 billion arms deal. Arms were going to be purchased anyway, but Trump was looking for a win. And yet you're right, Michael, there are so many pitfalls that can come if you bow to a king, if you hold the king's hand. If the First Lady were to wear a head covering, and so none have in recent memory. But the White House, this is the kind of thing that Trump would land in Riyadh and say, now this is more like it. Can we please have more ceremonies like this? This is the presidency that I thought I was getting into.
Hey, Josh, Broadway plays, they open up in Philly or Cleveland, and then they go to New York.
That's right.
With
That's
presidents,
right.
They usually go to Mexico or Canada, and then they go out on the global stage. Is his advance team up to this? These are guys, men and women, who've put together campaign rallies for, 30,000 people in Alabama. But this is a whole different drill. Speak to that quickly if you can.
Michael, you know this. George Gigikos, because you've done advance as well, he's a terrific advance guy, the director of White House Advance. He created all of the rallies last year in the campaign. He's probably been hard at work over the last few weeks putting a book like this together. This is hundreds of pages of long with every site diagram and scenario that they're going to face. Yeah, you're right. You don't do a 9-day trip first, beginning with a 15-hour flight. You go to Vancouver, you go to Mexico City. But this time, right. I think that you had to get it done. You had to get it started at some point. And for Trump, I think he'll get comfortable with the opulence of these trips. He'll get comfortable with the presidential and royal suites like they have at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. And he'll say, maybe this is a little bit better than hanging out in the West Wing all day.
Hey, Josh, quickly, I hope you can see it on your monitor. Look at this handsome guy with a full head of hair. That would be me doing advance for one Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush back in the 80s. What do you think?
Well, we all had a lot more hair back then, Michael, but, I know that C-9 aircraft. It's taken me on many of pre-advance and the site survey around the world. Very reliable aircraft. I'm glad that you got an experience, too. From your days, this is what Trump is after. This is Reagan, Gorbachev in Geneva, 1985.
Absolutely.
That's what they want to see from these trips. It's a different ballgame now. They're not going to get the cover of Time magazine, at least not for what they wanted.
Your book is terrific. Thank you, Josh King.
Thank you, Michael.
Let me check in on tweets and Facebook. What do you got, Catherine? Hit me with something. You like that picture? Why are the Saudis treating Trump so well after the Muslim ban? Isn't that true? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because of the Sunni-Shia split. We have a tendency in this country to regard the Muslim world as being homogeneous, when in fact it's not. So it's all tribal. That would be my short answer. Still to come on the